श्री श्रीमद श्रील अभय चरणानंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। यमुना मई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन डीवीटी संस्थापक आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। श्री श्री गौरनीताय की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ बलराम सुभद्रा देवी की जय। श्री श्री रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश की जय। गौ प्रेमानंदे। All glories to the Summit devotees. All glories to the Summit devotees. All glories to the Summit devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Praeshva Bhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamo Pagate Dhanamajnanadibhisaha Kalau Nashtadrishamesh Puranarko Dhunodita. This is Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 15. And today we'll study text number 33. Please repeat. Na hi antaram bhagavati iha samasta kuksha atmanam atmani nabhasi Iva dhira pashyanti yatra yuvayoho suralinginoho kim vyutpaditam hi udarabedi bhayam yataha asya Nahyantadam bhagavati hasamasta kuksha Atmanam atmani nabho nabhasi vadhiraha Pashyanti yatra yuvayoho suralinginoho kim Vyutpaditam hyudarabhedi bhayam yatosya Nahyantaram bhagavati hasamasta kuksha Atmanam atmani nabho nabhasi vadhiraha Pashyanti yatra yuvayoho suralingino kim Vyutpaditam hyudarabhedi bhayam yatosya Na hyantaram bhagavati hasamasta kuksha Atmanam atmani nabho nabhasiva dhiraha Pashyanti yatra yuvayoho suralinginoho kim Vyutpaditam hyudarabhedi bhayam yatosya Na hyantaram bhagavati hasamasta kuksha Atmanam atmani nabho nabhasiva dhiraha Pashyanti yatra yuvayoho suralinginoho kim Hyutpaditam hyudarabhedi bhayam yatosya Samasta kuksha Navasiva dhiraha Yoho suralinginoho kim Vyatpaditam hyudadabhedi bhayam yatosya Na hyantaram bhagavati hasamasta kuksha Atmanam atmani nabho nabhasiva dhiraha Pashyanti yatra yuvayoho suralingino kim Vyutpaditam hyudarabhedi bhayam yatosya Matajis. Na, not, he, because, antaram, distinction, Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, iha, here, samasta kuksha, everything is within the abdomen, atmanam, the living entity, Atmani, in the Supersoul, Nabhaha, the small quantity of air, Nabhasi, within the whole air, Iva, as, Dhiraha, the learned, Pashyanti, see, Yatra, in whom, Yuvayoho, of you two, Suralinginoho, dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha. Kim, how? Vyutpaditam, awakened, developed. He, certainly. Udarabhedi, distinction between the body and the soul. Bhayam, fearfulness. Yataha, wherefrom? Asya, of the Supreme Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Vaikuntha world, there is complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but where from can their disharmony come into existence? Kindly repeat. In the Vaikuntha world, there is complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but where from can their disharmony come into existence? Purport. Just as there are different departments in each state in this material world, the civil department and the criminal department, so in God's creation there are two departments of existence. As in the material world we find the criminal department is far, far smaller than the civil department, so this material world, which is considered the criminal department, is 1/4 of the entire creation of the Lord. All living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminals because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many in order to enhance his transcendental joy. The living entities, like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya, or illusion. The external energy of the Lord is called the material world, and the kingdom of the internal energy of the Lord is called Vaikuntha, or the kingdom of God. In the Vaikuntha world, there is no disharmony between the Lord and the residents. Therefore, God's creation in the Vaikuntha world is perfect. There is no cause of fear. The entire kingdom of God is such a completely harmonious unit that there is no possibility of enmity. Everything there is absolute. Just as there are many physiological constructions within the body, and yet they work in one order for the satisfaction of the stomach, and just as in a machine there are hundreds and thousands of parts, yet they run in harmony to fulfill the function of the machine. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Lord is perfect, and the inhabitants also perfectly engage in the service of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosophers, the impersonalists, interpret this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam to mean that the small sky and the big sky are one. But this idea cannot stand. The example of the big sky and the small skies is also applicable within a person's body. The big sky is the body itself, and the intestines and other parts of the body occupy the small sky. Each and every part of the body has individuality, even though occupying a small part of the total body. Similarly, the whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings, or anything that is created, are but a small part of that body. The parts of the body are never equal to the whole. This is never possible. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the living entities who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are eternally parts and parcels. According to the Mayavadi philosophers, the living entity in illusion considers himself part and parcel, although he is actually one and the same as the Supreme Whole. This theory is not valid. The oneness of the whole and the part is in their quality. The qualitative oneness of the small and large portions of the sky does not imply that the small sky becomes the big sky. There is no cause for the politics of divide and rule in the Vaikuntha planets. There is no fear, because of the united interests of the Lord and the residents. If we're falling asleep, maybe we should stand up. Maya means disharmony between the living entities and the Supreme Lord, and Vaikuntha means harmony between them. Actually, all living entities are provided for and maintained by the Lord because He is the supreme living entity. But foolish creatures, although actually under the control of the supreme living entity, defy His existence. And that state is called Maya. Sometimes they deny that there is such a being as God. They say, everything is void. And sometimes they deny Him in a different way. There may be a God, but He has no form. Both these conceptions arise from the rebellious condition of the living entity. As long as this rebellious condition prevails, the material world will continue in disharmony. Harmony or disharmony is realized because of the law and order of a particular place. Should read that again. Harmony or disharmony is realized because of the law and order of a particular place. Religion is the law and order of the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we find that religion means devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, give up all other religious principles and simply become a soul surrendered unto me. This is religion. When one is fully conscious that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and the supreme Lord, and one acts accordingly, that is real religion. Anything which goes against this principle is not religion. Krishna therefore says, just give up all other religious principles. In the spiritual world, this religious principle of Krishna consciousness is maintained in harmony, and therefore that world is called Vaikuntha. If the same principles can be adopted here, wholly or partially, then it is also Vaikuntha. So it is with any society, such as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. If the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, putting faith in Krishna as the center, live in harmony according to the order and principles of Bhagavad Gita, then they are living in Vaikuntha, not in this material world. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukam Karudi Vachalam Pangam Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Madgavirapi Gopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaivasam Payahapitva Hrishayustat Priyajanaha Nahyantaram Bhagavati Hasamasta Kokshau Atmanam Atmani Nabho Nabhasiva Dhiraha Pashyanti Yatra Yuvayoho Suralinganoho Kim Vyutpaditam Yudadabhedi Bhayam Yatosya. In the Vaikuntha world, there's complete harmony between the resonance and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there's complete harmony within space between the big and small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but wherefrom can their disharmony come into existence? This is a very relevant verse, as Srila Prabhupada has already hinted for us, in case we couldn't pick it up. In a letter to Sriman Atreya Rishi on February 4th, 1972, a fairly well-known letter, Srila Prabhupada wrote, "It's not so much that because there may be some faults in our God brothers and God sisters, or because there may be some mismanagement or lack of cooperation, that this is due to being impersonalists. No. It is the nature of the living condition to always have some fault. Even in the spiritual world, there is some fault and envy. Sometimes the gopis will quarrel over Krishna's favor. And once Krishna was so much attracted to Radharani that by mistake he tried to milk the bull instead of the cow. And sometimes when the gopis used to put on their dress and makeup for seeing Krishna, they would be too much hasty and smear kumkum and mascara in the wrong places. And their ornaments and dresses would appear as if small children had been trying to dress themselves, and they were not very expert like that. There are so many examples, but it is not the same as material fault or material envy. It is transcendental because it is all based on Krishna. Sometimes when one gopi would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, "Oh, she's done so nicely. Now let me do better for pleasing Krishna." That is envy, but it is transcendental without malice. So we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia. Rather, that is impersonalism. People should not expect that even in the Krishna consciousness society there will be utopia. Because devotees are persons, therefore there will always be some lacking. But the difference is that they're lacking because they have given up everything to serve Krishna: money, jobs, reputation, wealth, big educations, everything. Their lackings have become transcendental because, despite everything they may do, their topmost intention is to serve Krishna. One who is engaged in devotional service despite the most abominable action is to be considered saintly, because he's rightly situated. The devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that, and like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar or the best qualities of a person, not like the utopians, who are like the flies, who always go to the open sores or find the faults of a person. And because they cannot find any utopia, or because they cannot find anyone without faults, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So if there are sometimes slight disagreements between devotees, it is not due to impersonalism, but it is because they are persons. And such disagreements should not be taken very seriously. The devotee is always pessimistic about the material world, but he's very optimistic about the spiritual life. So in this way, you should consider that anyone engaged in Krishna service is always the best person. I'm very pleased that you are assisting your god brothers so nicely. Yes, this is our real position, to be servants of the servants of the servants. And by your quiet and humble attitude, you shall set the example of Vaishnava so that all may learn from you. And very soon their puffed up attitude will disappear, and they will come to you and seek your advice in matters. Generally, we always tend to think that we know everything about Krishna consciousness because we've read a few purports. But Srila Prabhupada continually surprises us if we push ourselves to read more than we have. He invariably surprises us. There's always something there. This letter is like today's purport, a transcendental tour de force in the spiritual power that a pure devotee can express so nicely. So, we should be humbled by this. I'm going to summarize the Acharya's commentaries on this very important verse, and then we can reflect on some of the content here. Srila Madhvacharya says, because situated within the womb of everything, the Supreme Lord, there's never any difference. They see the form of the Lord situated in this world using external harmony. That's the utopians, as I understand it. The word nabha means as in the sky. In this sense, there's cause of fear in these two, brought about by the difference in each body. Yet how is it that there is fear in the fearless one within all? And this was the idea that was created. The Kumaras here are wondering, how is it that even in Vaikuntha there's problems, trouble in paradise, as they say? So otherwise, what is the opposition? Tadvivivek says, and he quotes, Sarve dargata brahma ye bhedena vachakshashte sarvatrapi bhayam tesham mritanam tama evacha. All those given to division, or who see or proclaim separatism by having a divisive spirit, for them, everywhere and always, there's simply fear and ignorance, because they're as good as dead. Sridhar Swami says, and this is reflected in Srila Prabhupada's translation. Srila Prabhupada, you might have noticed, mentions the seed of fear and doubt, and these things are not in the text. So where's he getting it from? He's getting it from Sridhar Swami. With the words nahi, the first words of today's verse, they say, who even has any seed of doubt or fear, and who's separate? In Vaikuntha, that is. The word samasta means the universe. Kukshau means in the origin, or the womb, or literally. The word dhiraha means the most learned. They don't see any difference in the spirituality of the self and the Supreme. There's no difference. In other words, they see qualitative oneness, as Prabhupada has explained. But they see the spirituality of this Atman to be like the air in the sky and the air in a pot. If you have a pot full of air, in other words, an empty pot, the sky in that pot is the same as the air in that pot is the same as the air in the sky. This is the point that's being made here. Similarly, the spiritual quality of the individual soul is the same as the spiritual quality of the Supreme. In that sense, you can say that even the Supreme has flaws. Now we've invented this thing recently in ISKCON. Purushottam Mas, everybody's singing this. Vraje prasiddham navanita choram. So the Lord is glorified as the supreme thief. That's normally a fault. But when the Lord is a thief, it's not any fault. The Lord can have all the illicit sex he wants, and it's fine. So it's not that there are no flaws in the spiritual world, but they're not flaws. This is the point. But we have to understand these things, and there's only one way to understand these things, and that is by devotional service. You have to surrender. Then Krishna reveals. Otherwise, as long as we have this, what is the word? Renegade spirit, rebellious spirit that Prabhupada has several times mentioned in his purport, we will always be confused because we want to be confused. We want to insist that the Lord is free of flaws, but this is the utopian spirit that Prabhupada has been mentioning. Okay. Just as when there's bodily identification, fear of the bodily differences in others, like bodies of kings and so on, arises. You may be fearful. If you see someone in a secluded alley who looks to be a heroin addict, the fear will arise. It's natural because of bodily differences. So, how could such fear of Lord Hari and his devotees have been generated in these two who are dressed as suras? Where from? How so? Indirectly they're saying that this can't happen. So how is it so? Jiva Goswami says, persons fixed in Brahma, that is the dhiras, the sober persons, they don't see any difference. How have you developed seeing distinctions on account of different bodies? Udarabhedi. Each belly has to be filled, right? There are many different kinds of bellies in this world. Kuksha means belly. They all have to be eaten. We all have to eat. So all these bellies have to be filled. On that account, there is fear. Wait, maybe this one's going to take away my food. This is animal consciousness. Or maybe not something to eat, but maybe this person's going to take away my assets. They certainly will take away your assets. That's what this world is for. Animals are eating animals in this world. One time Govinda Dasi told me she had some problem because she had made so many people devotees, and then some managers came and took over the temple, and then they were messing things up. So all these people looked up to her, and she had to advise them, but she wasn't sure how to do that because it's a political problem. And so she went to Srila Prabhupada, and she told him the whole situation. Look, the temple president is saying this thing, and all these devotees, I've trained them up in another way. I don't know what to do. They're all coming to me for advice, but I don't want to get on the wrong side of the temple president either. So Prabhupada just sighed. And after some pause, he said, the mouse is afraid of the cat is afraid of the dog is afraid of the tiger. But as far as we're concerned, they're all animals. That was his answer. So anyway, so Jiva Goswami is saying this, because we're all in competition for the limited resources of this material world, therefore we're all fearful of the next one. And this is animal consciousness, I'm sorry to say. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur characteristically is giving the longest purport. He says the gist of this verse is that the wise Gyanis don't see the jiva to be different from the Lord in Vaikuntha, at least not in quality, because the Lord holds within his abdomen the whole universe, just as the air in a pot is not different from the great sky. So why are you afraid for the safety of the Lord? He says, fools, please listen. Fools, please listen. Those of you who mistrust are within the Lord, for the whole universe is within him. Samasta kokshao. The wise Gyanis do not see difference between all jivas, Atmanam, and the Lord, Atmani, here in Vaikuntha. He holds all the jivas within him, just as the sky in the pot is within the great sky. For what reason do you, dressed as devotees, fear that someone will come and pierce the abdomen of the Lord? Please tell us. Actually, the consciousness of the jiva, with its nature of meager, dependent knowledge, differs from the consciousness of the Supreme Lord endowed with unlimited, auspicious qualities. such as his inherent omniscience, like the difference of heat derived from the sun and some small candle. Everybody got this? You following what he said? The consciousness of the jiva, after all this that we've said about how the jiva's consciousness and the Lord's consciousness are one and the same, now we're hearing something different from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. What's he saying? He's saying actually there is a difference between the consciousness of the jiva and the consciousness of the Lord. What is that difference? The consciousness of the jiva is very small and it's dependent. It's not omniscient. Only the Lord is omniscient. This is the point that's being made here. It's like the sun can do things that a small candle cannot do. You can light a piece of incense with a small candle. But if you try to light a piece of incense with the sun, I'm afraid everything is going to be burned up before it even gets anywhere close to the incense. So, to achieve the perfection of liberation attained through non-dual knowledge by identifying sameness of consciousness while at the same time showing complete difference of the Lord and the Jiva, who are conscious entities from matter, difference from matter of the Lord and the Jiva, who are both conscious entities. This is not my translation. The example of the great sky is used to explain the Lord and the Jiva, and it's not appropriate. It's not inappropriate. Okay. So, disunity would be a very curious thing indeed in Vaikuntha. Just as in this world, harmony is very strongly intuited but very rarely experienced. The inverse of this world is the Vaikuntha world. There the norm is unity, and the aberration would be the kind of disunity that the Kumars are perceiving. That's why they're confused. So, here in this world, we should be surprised if we see some harmony, because it basically doesn't exist, usually. So here, they're just wondering how these two doorkeepers were not acting in harmony. The Kumaras were senior to everyone else in the material world, and they were also one with the desires of the Lord. They were the personification of Chitte Te Kodiya Aikya, as we sing every morning on Prabhupada's instruction. So the irony of the situation is that these poor doorkeepers, Jaya and Vijaya, they didn't actually do anything wrong. I mean, they made no mistake through any fault of their own. Why is that? Because their uncharacteristic actions were actually directly instigated by the Lord's own desire. This we know. This is Leela. And the Lord is making them commit this offense to the Kumaras. In the 5th canto, regarding Priyavrata Maharaj, you remember Priyavrata Maharaj did not want to get married. And his Guru Janas all convinced him, you should get married. His fear was that if I get married, then I will fall into Maya, because basically everyone who gets married does fall into Maya. So he was not interested in getting married, and even he disagreed with his own father. So then they had to enlist the support of other heavyweights. Who was it who came? Narad Muni? Brahma, yes. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So, anyway, so then he got married. Now, what happened after he got married? He fell into Maya. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, he explains for us, that there are 2 or 3 reasons that devotees have to undergo tribulation. Number 1, the first and foremost, most probable reason in all cases, they committed some aparadha. And that example is also being given in this pastime. Aparadha. It causes problems, always. But if you're forced to do something that you're not even really interested in doing because it's the Lord's desire, if you're forced to commit an offense, is that really an offense? Well, the Lord is taking it as so, and therefore we have some tough lessons to learn. The word here is used, vyutpaditam. That's a causative past passive participle. What does it mean? It means awakened or developed, produced, made to come about. It's causative. Somebody did this. It's not just happening automatically. The point is that somebody exercised volition here. Vyutpaditam, that's the word used. This position has been brought about by the Lord. That part is not being stated here. But we know this because we've been given the backstory. So, what's one lesson we can take from this? That is that we ourselves also have to be ready to be used by the Lord, even in ways like this. And that's not an easy thing to accept. Really, that's a hard pill to swallow. It's, it may happen to us, we don't know, but, probably the most difficult prospect for us to accept is the one that Srimati Radharani spoke when she said, Ashla Shiva Pararatam Pinashtamam Darshanat Maramahatam Kurotu Va. Yatha tatha va viridhatu lamparto mat prananathas tus eva naparaha. Her friends came after Krishna was long gone in Mathura, and their friends came and all tried to dissuade her. Look, you don't do this to yourself, you're just dying, and he's not worth it, he's not coming back, just forget about him. And we know that he's gone to others, he's gone to us also. He has no principle, he'll not be back, you'll not see him again, mark our words. And Radharani had to acquiesce. She said, yes, I know he's Lamparta. What does it mean, Lamparta? A really heavy word in Sanskrit, really heavy, even in Hindi. They can, even though he's such a rascal like this, but he's my only Lord. I cannot give my heart to anyone else. This is the glory of her love. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worships that love. And this verse was given to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confidentially, so that we can even have any clue that we have to develop a similar attitude, as much as we can. So this is what it means to be a predominated part and parcel. In practically, this is what it means to be a predominated, dependent, subservient, tiny living entity. We're one with the Lord in quality only, but in terms of quantity, no. And that makes a huge difference. Just like we gave the example, the sun and the matches, or drop of water and the ocean. A drop of water. If a drop of water falls on your head, it's no problem. If the ocean falls on your head, you understand. So, now Prabhupada has mentioned that we're all criminals as well, and we need to recognize that status very clearly. This is the reason that we're so opposed to this principle of dependence, subservience, submission, and even being exploited by the Lord. If he wants to, he can do this. Do we really accept this? Or are we going to try to hold him accountable to the rules that are only apply to us? This is where we see where we really stand. And this is why we have to chant our rounds every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If we fail to chant the holy name very sincerely and without offenses, we will not get over this envy, which is really, there's no polite way to throw a hand grenade, right? We have to say what it is. We're envious. So we have to chant the holy name in order to accept these teachings as they are. That's the only way we will ever actually do so at heart. So, Srila Prabhupada therefore tells us, quote, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya, or illusion. This is, I think, the end of his purport. There are several other things that we could say about this, Very, very instructive verse. First of all, just a few words. Antaram. Antaram means difference. Why this different? It's like separatism. It's mentioned elsewhere in the third canto. Dhira pashyanti. We're talking about, the Kumaras are talking about how the wise people see things. We know the qualifications for being dhira. They're mentioned in Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita, first verse. And there's another favorite example given, Lord Shiva. This is given by Kalidas, poet Kalidas in Meghaduta. Pretty intense example of what it means to be sober. So, we've already mentioned that this situation has deliberately been brought about by the Lord. Vyutpadita means to be produced or to be made to come about or to be derived. So, we talked about qualitative oneness and the difference between that and the quantitative oneness that the Mayavadis erroneously try to impugn here. So the question is, where from can this disharmony come? And Prabhupada has told us that we're all criminals because either we don't want to follow the Lord's laws or we're against what the Lord wants. It's kind of like a disharmonious situation, but we're attached to our disharmony. It's a little bit like in a kirtan, if there are 3 people playing mridanga and kartals, and every one of them is following a different leader, and the singer is doing something altogether different, it's just not going to work. That's called disharmony, or antaram, according to this verse. So, whenever there is a discrepancy like that, then immediately the living entity is entrapped by maya or illusion, Prabhupada says. In Vaikuntha, there's no cause of fear. The impersonalists try to assert that this oneness of the big sky and the air within the pot means, absolute oneness in all respects, but that's impossible. Because that air is surrounded by a pot, and the sky is not surrounded by a pot. That's a difference we have to recognize. So qualitative oneness is impossible. The whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings are small parts. With these parts and parcels have their qualitative oneness, but they're meant to cooperate. And what are some of the ways that we don't cooperate? We either try to deny God altogether, or if there is a God, he's impersonal and therefore irrelevant, and I don't have to modify my behavior in accordance with his desires. That's what it really comes down to. I don't have to surrender my independence. It's rebellious. So, or he may be a God, but he has no form. These conceptions arise from rebellion only. And as long as this rebellious condition prevails, this material world will continue to be a very uncomfortable place because everybody's at each other's throats. That's called envy. Now, here's an interesting thing. Harmony or disharmony, either way, is realized because of the law and order of a particular place. And then Prabhupada is talking about religion. Religion is the law and order. Now, people who are atheists and rebellious, as we've been discussing, these people always miss no opportunity to remind us. Religion is causing all the fights in the world, is it not? We've all heard this, correct? Religion is causing so much disharmony. If these religious people would just calm down, everything would be fine, they say. But it's not so. It's not at all so. But there is some truth in it. And that's why Srila Prabhupada mentions here. Because religion, sometimes people also, you've heard this one, well, I'm spiritual but not religious. That means, I appreciate the principles of spirituality, but I don't, not so fond of the rules and regulations. That's really what it comes down to. And it's a fact that there are different rules and regulations, and those rules and regulations cannot be, harmonious. They're going to be different because people are different. So, there is some truth in this claim that religion causes problems. Yes, it does. On that practical level, it can. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, religion means devotional service, and Krishna therefore says, give up all your religious principles and just surrender to me. This makes it inescapable, what we have to do. Very, very clear. This is Srila Prabhupada's characteristic style, and he does it again here. When one is fully conscious that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and the supreme Lord, and one acts accordingly, that is real religion. In other words, dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Religion means to do whatever God wants. If he tells you to kill somebody, fine, but you better be sure that it's him telling you. Otherwise, you're probably going to be arrested. Now, here Prabhupada brings it home. He says, if the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, putting their faith in Krishna as the center, not themselves as the center, live in harmony according to the order and principles of Bhagavad Gita, then they are living in Vaikuntha, not in this material world. So I will stop here. Anybody have any questions or any comments we can discuss? Yes? You just speak loudly, I'll repeat it, or Mike is there.
Hare Krishna. I have two questions. First question is, you spoke about Hare Krishna, how in a spiritual world even there is some kind of enviousness and all these things, but it's completely spiritual. In material world, it's completely opposite.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada said that.
Mm-hmm. So, first question is, how is possible then something material kind of consciousness appear in the spiritual world where it is already everything?
It's not material. Everything that's here is also there, but it's not material there. It's only material here.
No, but point is in the sense of
what we
down.
see as qualities and flaws is all mental concoction.
No, this I understand, but in a sense then somebody is falling from the spiritual world. Jai Vijay, they are a range, they're falling down is a range. Yes. But for many others who fall down, how is possible then appear this kind of material consciousness when everything is already in harmony, completely in harmony?
It's a choice, and we have that eternal choice. That's our constitution. We are constitutionally marginal. We can make a choice. Tatastha means we can go this side, we can go that side. But generally, it's a mistake because we are full in knowledge that we make only once. It's not really a mistake in that sense. It's an option. But it's not an intelligent option. That's how we fall down. Anything else?
There is another question. One more question.
Okay, just quickly.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, this verse in Bhagavad Gita then, if we perform abominable activities, but because if we are righteously situated, then we'll be okay. We'll not get reaction. Will not have any reaction. Okay, but point is then, what if some person do abominable action, today and after 3-4 months again, and after 1 year again, but it's still going on, Chant Hare Krishna. So look like this, in some sense, he's planning to do something, otherwise why he's repeating again abominable action. That means this verse in Bhagavad Gita should not be implied to him, because Prabhupada also said, and somebody maybe, I think in some conversation, he said if you 3 times do something...
I'm sorry, there's just too much noise and I can't hear what you're saying.
I'm sorry, what?
Maybe one sentence you can ask the question.
So if some devotee, they're performing abominable action, but in the course of maybe abominable action, something what is against religious principles, breaking principles. But he's doing that in the course of time, of 3 years, 4 years, after 10 years again.
He's still doing the same thing.
Is this verse applied to him also?
Is he what?
Is this verse from Bhagavad Gita applied to him also? Then he's right, he's situated.
It's possible. It depends on the situation. You can't give a blanket statement because everybody's individual. You had a question? Yeah, Prabhupada mentions this in his purport, that the criminal department is just a small corner of this material creation. I mean to say the material creation is the criminal department. It's just a small corner of the Lord's entire creation. And the civil department is the main thing. The main thing is not the prison. That's not the purpose of a city. But it's understood there will be some criminals, so the city has to have a prison. But the real purpose of the city is to everybody lives a normal life. So in the same way, Tripad Vibhuti means the spiritual realm is there, and Ekapad Vibhuti means the material world is here. This is the prison, and because this is the prison, therefore Prabhupada makes the very bold statement, everybody here is a criminal. That we have to swallow. Okay? Not exactly, no. It's figuratively stressed, it's stated like that, but it's not an exact fraction. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.